Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers and Ikra TV. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host Iqbal Bana. I come into your living rooms every week, invading your privacy at a time of the evening when I'm sure you must be busy with other matters. But I hope that every time I come to you, I bring issues and people who are of interest to you, who have some information, advice, guidance, suggestions that helps you in your day-to-day life. Muslim community in this country is facing enormous amount of challenges, and my guests always come here with enormous amount of knowledge and experience on major subjects such as education, health, Islamophobia, etc., etc. Today I have two very eminent guests. Both of you are very familiar to my viewers, and you will know them as soon as the camera pans onto them. My subject today is prisons, and particularly Muslim women in prisons. Now, we've discussed this subject before with Sophie Bansi and Ishtaq Ahmed, and over the years they've produced several reports. On this week, they're going to launch the fourth report on Muslim women in prisons. The issue about why Muslim women go into prison, what happens to them when they're in the criminal justice system, when they go inside, how are they treated, how are they looked after, what happens to them when they come back out again in terms of assimilation within the families or communities. These are enormous challenges that Sophie, in her previous report on Ishtiyaq, have very clearly laid out and talked about some of the challenges that Muslim women face. So today I want to talk about this particular subject, but now that they've produced the fourth report, and as we learn, the number of women in Muslim women in prisons has actually increased over the last few years. So can I welcome and introduce my two eminent guests, Ishtiyaq Ahmed, who we all know, former Chief Executive of the Bradford Council of Mosque and the Kismet Centre, and Sophie, who also works there, and a very well-known research analyst, assistant commentator, and has produced all these reports, has received many, many accolades and awards for the work she has done. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Real Talk again.
Walaikum salam.
We've spoken about this subject before, obviously.
We have.
And over the last few years, and obviously you're now in the process of launching your report on Thursday, all right, coming Thursday. Now, this issue about Muslim women in prisons and within the criminal justice system is something that has tested a lot of people. Most people don't think that Muslim women end up in prisons anyway. It's a hidden thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think when I have to put my hands up myself. When myself and Ishtiyaq started to look at this area 10 years ago, I was quite oblivious to it. I'd never, although I was working with women and young women and within the community, I can't say honestly, hand on heart, that I had ever thought about Muslim women and incarceration. Muslim women don't fit the stereotype that you may have of somebody that commits an offence or somebody who is a prisoner. So we were quite oblivious to it. As we proceeded with the research, we found actually our communities were either they had never thought of it, or perhaps some elements were in denial. But it is a rising issue, as you've mentioned. When we first started to look at the numbers of Muslim women in prison, at that time 10 years ago, they made up 6% of the prison population, and now years on they're about 7.5%. So a very hidden area of need, very hidden.
Right. I mean, the factors for going into prison can be multiple factors.
Multiple, yeah.
From the very simple, I remember last time you said, telling me, which came as a real shock to me, and that is a failure to pay the TV license.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't even realize that people can go into prison, particularly women, and also women who are pregnant. I mean, we saw something happening with the postmasters as well.
Yes.
Now, these are some of the challenges. People want to know what sort of crimes are being committed that lead to women being incarcerated into prison. Are they low-level crimes or serious crimes? Now, we know every community has issues within their families and within their structure, but just to try and get a broad picture, that might be helpful, please.
I think when you do mention, and in my past when I've mentioned I work with Muslim women, people then, because it comes as a shock to them, think that automatically it's something quite heinous that woman has done, and it's absolutely not. Our research pieces over the years, the 4 pieces we've conducted, really demonstrate they can range from very low level crimes such as shoplifting, not paying a TV license, minor indiscretions, to then more complex crimes that are rooted in the difficult backgrounds that many women have had. So unfortunately, we've picked up in our research what led to the incarceration, what were the drivers, that some of these Muslim women have had difficult paths, and issues such as domestic violence or coercion may have played a role, led them into the criminal justice system, and then actually not having any familiarity with the police to be able to defend yourself or to disclose safely, which may result in a community sentence rather than a prison sentence, and not being aware of how the system works or asking for a pre-sentence report means that many of them have failed. And then of course we know about the disproportionate sentencing of Black, Asian, minority ethnic women, which was well highlighted by David Lammy, MP David Lammy's review into disproportionate sentencing. So unfortunately, yes, the drivers are very minimal misdemeanors to sometimes more complex misdemeanors, and we found in our report that there's no blanket approach to, there's no one offence. If there is, unfortunately, the crime that is highlighted is sisters who are involved in drugs charges where there is also a man involved.
Right, okay.
Codies.
Right, okay. So, I mean, we'll come back to that. Ishtiaq, being a chair of the Council of Mosque, Chief Executive Council of Mosque, being a very, as everybody knows who watches this program regularly, a highly respected, regarded community activist, champion for equality and diversity. I mean, this is an issue that you've been very closely working with Sophie as well. Now, as a community, within Bradford and surrounding areas where we have a very large Muslim population, do our institutional organizations like the mosque and the madrasas and the Council of Mosque and other institutions, do they are aware of this issue? Do they understand the complexity of this issue? And do you feel that they need to be sort of taking a more proactive role in trying to see how we can overcome, particularly issues around discrimination in the criminal justice system, for example? As Sophie says, it's widespread knowledge that there is discrimination, disproportionality in the sentencing of Muslim women and people of colour. So,
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you for having me back.
Always a pleasure, sir. Always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to be here and share my thoughts and views on often difficult subjects, but
this
subjects
is a very difficult
that
subject.
we within our community need to talk about. When we started some 10, 12 years ago, this issue was totally not on the radar of the community. It was also not on the radar of many stakeholders and agencies within the family of a criminal justice system. So I think when we 10, 12 years ago, when we were talking about this subject, the reaction from the community was one of disbelief. Muslim women going to prison. Things have changed, and the phenomenal work, which I think, and the leadership, which people like Sophia have shown. I was going to say that this program should have been dedicated to the phenomenal work and the enormously important work which Sophia has been leading for the last 10, 12 years. So I think all the credit goes to her and her team. So that
Well,
is
I'm sure you've been a very able and sort of influential advisor and guide
I've been
in
there
Sophia
about.
and her team as well.
I have been
I've
there.
I've already interviewed her one-to-one in the first, I think, report.
I have
anyway.
been there about,
Yeah.
but I don't take the credit for the work that she's done and her team has done. So I think that needs to be said. Over the last 10 years, the CGS stakeholders, our own community organizations, and that includes masajids. I think there's now greater awareness. There is also a greater acknowledgement, and we also see some ownership being taken.
Oh, right.
But being taken. that this is something that we cannot actually hide, ignore, as something that we should actually do something about it. So I think we have seen a kind of a shift in the culture and the mindset of our community organizations, and particularly I think we have been actually supported by some of the most prominent muftis and ulamas, and they have acknowledged and commended the work that our team is doing. So I think that's important. I need to actually put that on.
I mean, just are you able to give us a brief idea of how this Islamic support, from the muftis and others, has actually translated itself into action?
Well, yes, there are a number of ways.
Okay.
One is that for majority of the women, faith identity is very important for them. Many have actually see faith as a healing, spiritual guidance in their life.
So this is once they're inside the prison.
Inside,
so give them spiritual support.
So they develop that awareness. That awareness actually stays with them for majority of them when they come out of the prison. Yeah, and when they come out of the prison, they are often looking for advice and guidance. Okay, and also advice and guidance in terms of some of the difficulties and some of the challenges they're facing. And they're saying, look, how our faith can help us. So we refer women to local ulamas for guidance and advice. Yeah. So for example, two of our young women attended zikr and information and teaching sessions at a local madrasa throughout Ramadan.
MashaAllah,
yeah. There are other women who also actually go to ulamas or actually get us to refer them to ulamas and alimas for advice and guidance. So that's one practical way in which our ulamas and masajids are actually helping. Also in terms of our business community, when it comes to our Eid celebrations, Eid dinner, gifts, our business community has come forward and supported us practically. And there are other ways as well.
I know in Ramadan a lot of sort of businesses do give food for the Muslim prisoners to participate
so
in
there
fasting.
are practical ways. But most important actually the fact that they are saying to us is that it is important work. They're endorsing our work, and we haven't, alhamdulillah, in the 10 to 12 years that we've been around, we haven't had a backlash. There hasn't been a negativity around our work.
Right.
And most of the time actually when we have gone out to our community leaders and faith leaders, they have been very receptive and very commending of work we do. And I think that's important.
There's normally, if anybody gets involved in a criminal activity, whether they're innocent or guilty, doesn't matter. There's a stigma, isn't there?
Yeah,
and Sophie, that was one of the issues we discussed last time, particularly stigma for sisters who end up in the criminal justice system.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we had a sister who came with you who wears the niqab as well now.
Yeah.
MashaAllah, she's completely transformed her life. And I was hoping that she might be able to join me one day, inshallah, with yourself, to talk about her experience of in prison. Now, obviously, we talked about the community sort of responding over the years, and that is response getting much better now. But the prison institution, Her Majesty is Inspector of Prison, have they done any work on this particular issue about discrimination, Islamophobia? Because there's not many Muslim women prison officers, I presume. I'd probably say there's none.
I think when I went in, I was one of the few Muslim women who was working in a custodial setting, not as a chaplain. So I think when you go in as a chaplain, there are alamas in our female prisons.
Are they?
Yes, there are. For the female prisons, there are alamas and imams for the male prisons. So they try to accommodate, and that is a statutory responsibility on HMPPS to provide that in terms of a Muslim chaplain, but a chaplain as well at any one time. So alhamdulillah, they have that support there. But I think in terms of the practice that myself and Ishtiaq Bhai were trying to do in terms of, you know, the learning and research and through the gate, there were not many people that looked like us. And again, I've been very honest with you, Iqbal Bhai, there was quite a lot of stigma attached to me as a Muslim woman who wanted to go and work in a prison. You know, it wasn't deemed acceptable or respectable at the time, or albeit if you looked at it within an Islamic framework, it's absolutely what we are prescribed to do. You know, recognize the hardship of prisoners and support them. At the time, again, the diversity within prisons was not there from Black, Asian, minority ethnic people in terms of officers. So the population that they were serving was disproportionately Black, Asian, minority ethnic, but the officers did not reflect that. And I think it was a very difficult time as well, by Iqbal, in the sense that unfortunate things had happened in the external community in terms of, you know, the London bombings and other things. And the word Muslim, unfortunately, 10 years ago was synonymous with being
Negative,
extreme and
yeah,
negative
extreme
connotations. So any time you said the word Muslim prisoner, you know, it would be seen through the lens of security. And so for myself, going in, heading a project called Muslim Women in Prison, you know, automatically I think that there was some scrutiny on what it was that we were trying to do. It was difficult, and it's taken many years to avail the understanding of the system, but the sympathy of the system, to say, actually, we're very balanced as a community. Our practitioners are very balanced. We're not here to say anything extreme or radical, but these are the real life journeys of these women. A lot of the challenges that they face, Iqbal Bhai, are cultural challenges, are patriarchal challenges rather than Islamic challenges. So it was very complex, dissecting all those different strands and saying, actually, this is what Islam says. You know, Islam says you have a right to be forgiven. If you seek forgiveness, you will, inshallah, be granted that.
Sure.
You do get a second chance. You know, you don't, as a woman, you don't have to carry this disproportionate stigma that you've spoken about. Unfortunately, for some reason, the stigma attached to a Muslim woman who goes to prison is much more pronounced than a Muslim man.
I mean, some young men unfortunately see going in prison as a badge of honour,
Yes.
don't they? I mean, you know, they see that as a badge of honour. And we've seen some of the after effects of that. But I mean, coming back to the prison institution itself, over the last 10 years working with them,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm sure you must have seen some shift in their
Yes.
attitude towards the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think there has been a clear shift in the sense of, look, this initiative is Muslim community led. We've worked extremely hard to articulate and put on the radar, in a format where we've written reports, we have sat panels. You know, currently I sit on the external scrutiny for HMPPS and Ministry of Justice.
Right.
So we worked extremely hard at every level to be able to convey the challenges impacting, but some of the drivers to Muslim women coming through the system. We have a very active lived experience sisters group, so women that have come through the prison who also work with the system.
Right.
And I have to say, yes, of course, now when in 2024 the race action plans are being developed, and there's more of a push as a society for us to better understand the needs of women. So alhamdulillah, it's been 10 very long years of pushing at the system, but yes, we do see some progress. We see an acceptability, and the Muslim Women in Prison Project brand is recognised nationally, and I believe this is why we're at the stage where we are sat today, where we're launching the 4th report, but also for the first time ever we're launching a film into the experience of Muslim women.
Right. We're hoping to show that film at some stage, or
Inshallah.
part of that film.
Can I just add to what
Go on.
Sophia is saying, that when you started the journey, racism, resulting discrimination was acknowledged. But discrimination based on faith and Islamophobia was actually not acknowledged by any of the institutions. The significance of faith as a healing mechanism for Muslim women was not understood, not acknowledged, and not actually catered, provided for. Yeah. What we are seeing now, that all the action plans and all the strategies that are being developed by different institutions, faith is actually there now. Faith is
Right.
being acknowledged.
It's one of the key components.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
And there's a recognition, yeah, for Muslims, and particularly Muslim women. Faith can be a very positive catalyst.
Just with men, there's this notion that when they go into prison and they start learning more about Islam, they become radicalized. This is a notion that has been developed in this country. Do we have any similar issues with Muslim women? Is there sort of some sort of parallel thinking within the system?
I think we're there in the system to educate. So there are instances that I've come across, and if you could take into consideration, Iqbal, by the journey of women, and when we talk about stigma, stigma has ramifications. So sometimes, unfortunately, when sisters are incarcerated, family members may choose to withdraw because we've written about this in our report. There's a transference of stigma. So especially, I believe some of the male members are particularly discouraged when sisters go in. They take that quite personally because they're supposed to be the custodians of the family. So if their daughter or their wife or their sister has offended, and you know, ultimately as a head of the household, sometimes they can say, look, we don't want to go and visit her. Perhaps we don't want anything to do with her. Now, in that instance, when a woman is feeling quite lonely and isolated, she's in a system that she doesn't understand. She's living, you know, with communities she's never lived with in prison. You know, automatically that woman will look for solace. She'll look for encouragement, and that is possibly where I've seen it the most. They'll turn towards their faith. So when they pray and they become more steadfast, yes, I have seen that mistranslated sometimes in the system, where people think, oh, is she becoming radical, she's too extreme, she's praying 5 times a day, and where you have to then translate and say, well, actually this is part of her daily obligations.
So rehabilitation, as Istiaq says, in a way.
And that's where she seeks her solace and her forgiveness, because whether or not family or community will forgive, inshallah, Allah Ta'ala says, you know, you pray and you seek my forgiveness and I will. So there's a lot of strength and support that Muslim sisters gain from their faith. And sometimes when you're an outsider and you're the spectator, that may be mistranslated. So projects like ours are there to actually explain and dissect. Actually, this is what's happening here. In the bigger picture, you know, this woman needs this support and this solace because she may not have those other support structures around her. So yes, there is that. But also, I think because the Muslim women compared to the male brothers are smaller in numbers as well, you know, it's the dynamic's slightly different as well.
I mean, that's very interesting. I was going to ask about family, and I'm going to come back to that. We're going to be going for a very short break, inshallah. As I keep saying to you, you know, we're going for a break. Enjoy your tea, coffee, faluda, whatever it is that you enjoy. We'll be back with you soon. So far, this discussion for me has been fascinating and really enlivening in terms of educating myself. And I'm sure there are many, many people out there who'll be wondering, you know, what is the next stage and the next step, and how the community responds. Particularly families, as Sophie says, sometimes families ostracize members, you know, who are involved in criminal activity. And why do they distinguish between a female and a male when they go into prison? And this is some of the things I want to talk to my guest about. So thank you very much. See you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.